All right, guys, let's talk about the new type of targeting. So, how would you describe your audience if I asked you right now, right? Probably men or women who are 25 to 34 years old who make $100,000 a year, right? So, most marketers and most business owners kind of describe their audience the way that we've always kind of thought about describing people and describing our demographics, right? Women who live in Boston, age 25 to 34, young professionals, making 50 to $74,999 a year, right? As human beings, we're kind of taught to describe people by generic kind of demographical information, age, gender, income, right? But as marketers, especially in 2018, we have access to just too much data to be that generic. Because instead, guys, we need to describe our customers based on their interests and actual intent. Facebook gives us way too much data to be that basic and just say women who live in Boston, a specific age range and a specific like monetary income. Let's take an example of somebody who we want to target specifically like related to birthdays, right? Like if we had like a birthday gift company, we can actually target people, who are close, who have close friends with birthdays in the next month or 7 to 30 days or 0 to 7 days, right? Close friends of people with birthdays in a week. We can target people who've read specific books, right? Like we can target people who have read Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? And like that's a very powerful thing because we know the only people who would actually go out and out of their way to read Rich Dad Poor Dad are obviously interested in kind of doing things a different way. They're interested in entrepreneurship. They're interested in kind of not living the quote unquote average life with the 9 to 5 job that a lot of people kind of are used to. We can target people who recently moved, right? Facebook has all types of data about where people generally are geographically for a sustained period of time, and then once like that geography changes, right, they're immediately categorized as recently moved. We can also target people who are friends of people who recently moved, right? And then if we're a company that sells housewarming gifts or something like that, right? The whole point of this, guys, is to kind of start to understand what interest demographics and behaviors targeting wise are actually available to you, and then really starting to connect what those targeters and what those interests could actually be relevant for from a marketing perspective, right? We can target people who liked Tony Robbins' page. We can target people, who have liked Coachella. We can target people who are the director of marketing at a tech company, right? Has a friend who recently was engaged. You can target people, who are married. You can then target people who are married and also who are parents of kids aged, seven to age 13 to 18. Like how amazingly targeted is this for specific demographics, right? Like if you own like a karate gym and like parents are trying to, get activities for their children to do, and maybe you're only targeting people who are married, and then you're only targeting people who are married and parents with teenagers, and then you're only targeting people who are married and parents of teenagers and who have shown interest in karate or fitness, right? Like you can really get so much more targeted than just like kind of the generic way that marketers used to think, because Facebook has so much data now that you can utilize that. But we have to get in the mindset of kind of understanding what is available and then how you can actually use that and cater it specifically to your business. We can also think about major life events, guys, right? Because major life events are super important. If people have job changes, that they're looking for specific things. If people have a job change and they recently moved, maybe they're in the market for real estate, right? And so if you're like a real estate agent, kind of starting to get into the mindset of who would be looking for a house? Somebody who recently moved, now lives in, Dallas, Texas, recently had a job change, right? Maybe the birth of a child, so they need like an additional room in their house, right? Instead of just having an apartment building, now they're looking for maybe like a 3 bedroom to, raise a kid or something like that. Everything has an importance, right? And understanding and kind of figuring out how those things play together and how it all pieces together to target your advertisement and only show your advertisement to the perfect people is going to pay off such huge dividends, right? Like we've said 100 times during this course, and I know I keep saying it, but it's so important. You'll figure out the perfect ad by split testing, but you're shot in the dark. Understanding like what kind of total interests are available to you up front is the way that you really kind of get your foot in the door. Creating the best kind of most targeted ad with the most creativity, right? That is how you kind of get those initial tests to also be profitable. So if you can break even or even profit on your very first advertisements, then you're already doing such a huge service to yourself, because the profit and the huge amount of profits from Facebook ads come from the split tests and the narrowers and the iterations, and then obviously the retargeting, right? So 5 minutes in an old book reveals that most of what is being sold today as new insights into human behavior is merely the rediscovery of knowledge and that we have had for centuries, right, guys? Advertising is nothing new. It's repurposing the same information, reformatting the same information in different ways, and it has been for years, literally hundreds of years. And to succeed, guys, all you have to do is the following. Craft an appealing offer, right? Articulate the benefits in the form of how your customers will feel using your product or service. And then in different ways, you just to appeal to different types of humans. And then you have to put those messages in front of the right people and test. And Facebook allows you for the first time kind of ever in marketing to target people in unbelievably accurate ways. Like if for the newspaper, you could never target someone who had read Rich Dad Poor Dad and send them a newspaper, right? You could never target people who are married with kids aged 13 to 18 who live in Dallas, who are interested in karate, and those types of targeters and narrowers didn't exist before the internet. And Facebook and Google have really revolutionized what we're able to do from a targeting perspective. And so it's our responsibility now to take ourselves out of kind of the traditional mindset of targeting, people just on gender, age, and income, and really start to get much more targeted in an artistic way. That's why I always say that Facebook is as much an art as it is a science. And so it's our responsibility to kind of, expand our creativity, test things, right? And if you're looking for suggestions, use suggestions, right? If you're looking for inspiration, just browse through the demographics, interests, and behaviors, right? We went through all of these guys, and we did that for a reason. It's not because I love doing it. It's because it's extremely important understanding what is available to you. Because if you don't know what your tools are, then you can't possibly use them in the most efficient and intelligent way. So I hope you guys enjoyed that one, and let's get to the next.